Good afternoon. I'm David Ferriero, the Archivist of the United States, and it's a pleasure to welcome you here to the William G. McGowan Theater, and a special welcome to those of you who are joining us on YouTube. Fans of Laura Ingalls Wilder have read and reread her Little House books over the last 8 decades. The books inspired the beloved 1970s television series Little House on the Prairie, and the series in turn has inspired another book, My Prairie Cookbook, Memories and Frontier Food from My Little House to Yours. Melissa Gilbert, who played young Laura Ingalls in the show, is here to launch the publication of her cookbook, which not only shares favorite recipes, but also includes her personal recollections, behind-the-scenes stories, and memorabilia. A little archival trivia for you. The National Archives has its own connection with Little House. The Herbert Hoover Library, which is one of our presidential libraries and part of the National Archives, contains the papers of Rose Wilder Lane, the only child of Laura Ingalls Wilder. Rose was the first biographer of Herbert Hoover, became a good friend of his, and her heir donated her papers to the Hoover Library in 1980. The Hoover Library website has a Laura Ingalls Wilder page with information about the collection, as well as activities for children. And at this very moment, upstairs in the public vaults, you will see currently on display the original homestead files of Laura Ingalls Wilder's father and husband. So a big connection with Laura Ingalls Wilder. Before we begin today's program, I'd like to alert you to 2 upcoming programs. On Monday, September 15th at noon, author and historian Todd Brewster will be here to talk about his new book, Lincoln's Gamble, How the Emancipation Proclamation Changed the Course of the Civil War. Brewster recounts the most critical 6 months of Lincoln's presidency, in which he signed the Emancipation Proclamation and changed the course of the Civil War. And on Wednesday, September 17th at 7 p.m., we celebrate the 227th anniversary of the U.S. Constitution. You can help us celebrate by joining us for a panel discussion on the topic, The State of the Constitution, Is the Constitution Still Working for America? Panelists include Akil Reed Amar of Yale Law School, Congressman Robert Hurd of Virginia, and Benjamin Witz of the Brookings Institute. They'll explore recent court cases and calls to amend the U.S. Constitution. To learn more about these and all of our programs and exhibits, consult our monthly calendar of events. There are copies in the lobby, as well as sign-up sheets where you can receive it by email or regular mail. And another way to get more involved with the National Archives is to become a member of the Foundation for the National Archives. The Foundation supports all of our education and outreach activities, and there are applications for membership in the lobby also. And a little secret, no one has ever been turned down for membership in the Foundation for the National Archives. Our featured guest made her on-air debut modeling baby clothes at the age of 2. And at 7 years old, she began acting in television commercials. In the summer of 1973, the 9-year-old Melissa Gilbert joined the cast of Little House on the Prairie as Laura Ingalls and stayed with the popular series for 9 seasons. After Little House, Gilbert appeared in a variety of television productions. In 1985, she became the youngest recipient of a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Her production company, Half Pint Productions, formed when she was just 14, produced the Emmy-winning television movie The Miracle Worker and other well-received television specials. In 1987, she made her off-Broadway debut and has starred in such productions as The Miracle Worker, The Glass Menagerie, and Bus Stop. Gilbert's legacy came full circle when she starred as Ma in the national tour of Little House on the Prairie, the musical. Next spring, she'll be making her return to television in the ABC drama Secrets and Lies. In addition to her acting, directing, and writing career, Gilbert served 2 terms as president of the Screen Actors Guild and 2 terms as vice president on the AFL-CIO Executive Council, as vice president for the California Labor Federation, and as the commissioner on the California Film Commission. An avid philanthropist, Melissa Gilbert is the president of the board of directors of the Children's Hospice and Palliative Care Coalition, and recently became the first ever national spokesperson for the partnership at drugfree.org. In 2009, she published her memoir, Prairie Tale, and this year released her first children's book, Daisy and Josephine. And today she's here to tell you about her latest book, My Prairie Cookbook. Joining Miss Gilbert as moderator for today's discussion is Arch Campbell. Arch has reported on movies, theater, and entertainment, and popular culture on national and Washington, D.C. television since the 1970s. The Washington Post described him as a local legend and an iconic broadcaster. He gained a following as part of WRC-TV's Dream News team that included Jim Vance, Doreen Gensler, Bob Ryan, and the late George Michael. After 32 years at WRC, he continued work for another 8 years at ABC 7 and News Channel 8, making him one of the few broadcasters to work 40 years in television in the same city. Arch Campbell holds a bachelor's and master's degree in journalism from the University of Texas, his home state, and is the recipient of the Washington, D.C. Mayor's Arts Award for a generation of arts coverage in the nation's capital. Please join me in welcoming Melissa Gilbert and Arch Campbell to the National Archives.
Well, here we are, and I have your new book.
Yes, you do.
A Prairie Cookbook. And I want to start by saying that Laura Ingalls, could she fry a chicken or what?
She could certainly make some spicy, mean chicken. I can fry a chicken, and it won't actually cause your mouth to catch on fire like her character did on the show.
But this recipe and many others are in the book you've written.
Yes, and they're mine. They're not Laura's. Although backstage, I was just handed a copy of Laura's dandelion wine recipe.
Ooh. Do we have any of that?
After her life on the prairie and crossing the plains in a covered wagon, I think she deserved a little dandelion wine.
Well, Melissa, it's a great honor to have you at the National Archives.
Thank
and
you.
You are here because Laura Ingalls Wilder's papers are in the archives.
Yes.
And let's start by talking a little bit about her. You played her for those 9 seasons. What did you learn about her over those years?
You know, I learned so much about her then and continue to. I read the Little House books. I had read Little House in the Big Woods before I auditioned for the show. It was a requirement at school and loved it. And then read Little House on the Prairie when I got the role and again, loved that and read the books as we were doing the show. I didn't do a lot of research. I was a kid, you know. I was sort of playing a really complicated game of dress up, a really great game of dress up. But it was, you know, it was work too. I learned. I guess I learned more about what she was like maybe on the inside because I had to interpret her feelings through her words. I was the narrator of the show, and the show was filmed from the perspective of Laura. Yeah. And so I had to sort of tap into that adventurous, outgoing, super curious, imaginative young woman, which wasn't really all that difficult for me to do at that age, because that's who I was. They couldn't find me a lot of the times on the set because I'd be off catching frogs and stuff. Just the other night, I'm shooting this series in Wilmington, and we were at a friend's house, and a toad hopped in the garage, and everybody screamed, and I went, "What?" And I picked it up, and I put it in, and it peed on me, and I went, "Up, it peed," and they're all running away screaming, and I went, "What are you, I'm just going to wash it off." "Oh, you're going to get warts." From a toad? Do you know how many toads I have lifted with these hands over the years? Even the children were like, "No, no. Come on, you guys. Look, it's a toad. Look how cool."
So are you saying that the character actually shaped you as the person you are today?
I think so. I think
Really?
a lot. I think we shaped each other in a lot of ways.
Huh.
And I think certainly the experience of shooting the show shaped
Right.
who I am. And being around the people I was around, Michael Landon most especially, shaped a great deal of who I am today. But yeah, I think you know, I probably was and have always been a little more timid, and playing Laura made me more courageous, especially as a kid.
Did you meet members of the Wilder family as you were shooting and talk with them and
I
learn more
didn't
that
then.
way?
No.
Really? They weren't
no,
around?
No,
Huh.
not that I was aware of. And I would certainly have been, conscious and aware of that if that had happened. I met and became friends with Beth Ingalls Leasis, who's a member of the Ingalls Wilder family, a descendant, when I was on tour doing the musical version.
Right.
And then I had to, during doing that show, I
You
had to
went
go back, full circle. But I had to go back to the books and then all sorts of other research to understand what it was like from an adult's perspective. Because from Laura's perspective, it was this great adventure, when in fact it was, and she's just released the unauthorized, or not the unauthorized, but the unedited version, where she sort of, not entirely, but sort of tells the truth, and it was dirty and bloody,
version.
and yeah, I mean she doesn't even write about the brother that she lost when they were moving, I believe, from Wisconsin to Kansas. She doesn't write about her baby brother being born or dying in the books. We did in the show, and the reality was he died on the road, not even on the road, on the trip, and they had to bury him in the middle of nowhere and keep going.
And that happened a lot back
A lot.
then.
A lot
that
of
happened to a lot of families.
A lot of families, single women raising children on their own were pretty common because the men were, got injured and maimed and died and all kinds of. I mean, you could, not to, I'm gonna, like the Mr. Edwards songs, you could die from a toothache.
Well,
Not in your
you
heel,
could.
but you could die from a toothache then. And life was perilous, and the weather. I mean, I live in Michigan. I moved to Michigan a year ago, and I just experienced my first Michigan winter, and it happened during the vortex. It was 17 below at the coldest. We had 78 inches of snow. I had no choice but to prairie out and put on my snowsuit. And I was the idiot downtown running around throwing myself in drifts of snow. And Tim and I were throwing each other with the kid, and the dogs were all inside going, "What are you guys doing? It's really cold."
I love that, prairie out. Is that a new expression for you?
Maybe, I don't know. I prairie up, prairie out, prairie dogs. That's what we called ourselves on the Little House tour. We were the P Dogs, and we would have a chant backstage, and we would pick a word for the day, the word for the show. Everyone had a choice, and then we'd go 1, 2, 3, P Dogs rule, and then we'd start the show. Shows you what boneheads actors can be.
You mentioned
grown-ups.
Moving to Michigan, which I
Yes.
think is interesting because it seems like a lot of people gain success in California and then they leave. And how is that for you?
It's the smartest thing I've done in a really, really long time. Mm-hmm. It's been so freeing and so it's so peaceful. It's such a different life. Tim and I, before we moved to Wilmington to shoot this series that we're working on together, which explains why I'm not a redhead. I don't know if you guys miss it, but I miss it so much.
There's still,
I don't know who this is.
there's
I mean,
a
I
little
do.
red in there still.
Yeah, it keeps creeping out. They have to color it every 2 weeks because the red keeps coming through.
But you moved to Michigan.
Yes, and before we left for Wilmington, before we left to drive across to Wilmington to move into our house there.
Road trip.
We road trip everywhere. We were packing up the car and we were just sweaty and disgusting, and we went to the local steakhouse, which is the nice restaurant a couple blocks away, to have a bite to eat, and we walked in and sat down, and Tim said, "Isn't it great that we can walk in here and there are no casting directors
Right.
looking at us? There's no chance of us losing a job because we look like hell in a restaurant." And honest to God, that takes a lot of pressure off. LA is a very difficult town, and I'm going to quote my husband. I'm going to quote him a lot just because he's brilliant. But when you work at the mall, you don't want to live at the mall, and that's what LA is like. And I'm really tired of at 50 trying to make myself a size 2 because it just is not happening. I'm done. And you know what? I like living in a place and being in a place in my life where my forehead can move and I don't have to put fillers in my face and things are starting to droop.
You look great.
Thank you.
I
wasn't fishing. I'm
No,
just
no,
it's
no,
the
I'm
reality
telling you.
of maybe I was fishing a little. I mean, the
You don't
reality
need to
of the
fish.
situation, and I'm covered in mosquito bites. I'm all prairied out. I've got all these bruises everywhere. fights last week, and
I think they had bigger mosquitoes back in those Prairie days.
I will have to.
Really?
There are some mosquitoes the size of Cessnas in Wilmington, North Carolina, and
Well,
palmetto bugs that could actually carry me away on their backs.
That is one thing, though. You can get plenty of work and not be in California. And Wilmington is quite a center
It is.
of
It is.
filming.
It's a massive hub. I have worked more as an actor in the last year since I moved to Michigan than I did in the last 4 years
Really?
in LA. Yep. I auditioned. We self-tape for pilots and stuff. I've done a play, an independent feature film, and now I'm shooting. I mean, I'm actually a recurring role in this series in
Oh,
Wilmington.
and tell us about the series, because you've mentioned it, and we want to look for it.
It is called Secrets and Lies, and it is for ABC. It's going to debut in the spring in the time slot after Scandal.
Ooh,
Yes, which is a
we like
lovely
that
time
show
slot.
here.
It's a 10-episode multi-part special event series starring Juliette Lewis and Ryan Phillippe. And it's a real whodunit. That happens in the first episode in a neighborhood in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yeah.
And Ryan Phillippe is the prime suspect, and Juliette Lewis is the detective, but he insists that he's innocent and goes about proving that he is not guilty by trying to prove that each of his neighbors at some point is guilty, including me. And I'm the dark, mysterious one with the weird bruises and cuts and unexplained sounds coming out of her house. And then each of us get a chance, and our story comes out, and you find out in episode 10 who the actual killer is. And nobody knows. Nobody.
Oh,
Well,
not even you?
I sleep with the executive producer. So I kind of read
Does
the
he talk in
outline.
his sleep?
No, but he lets me read the outline. So I do know who the killer is.
good.
And it's one of those situations where even when I read it, I turned to him and I went, "What? How do you do this? Nobody makes this person the killer. Does the killer know that it's... He said, no, the killer does not know that the killer is the killer. See, I'm not even doing a gender thing. I'm being really cautious because the ABC will send Mickey Mouse over to... I'll be done.
That Mickey he'll knife you in the front.
I'll tell you, when
know?
you work for him, he's a tough
guy.
guy. Yeah, when he
Now,
gets Donald in there...
I'm going to get this conversation back to, well, I'm clearly not getting it anywhere.
My book,
but
I'm sorry, Art.
No, this is wide-ranging. We will get back to the show because I know all of you are fans of Little House on the Prairie, and we will take questions, so you will have your chance to ask about the show.
Thank you all for coming out in the rain, too. Which I really, really, really appreciate it.
What do you think of TV these days?
Oh, well, here's the deal. There's a lot of really bad stuff on television. There's a lot of just pandering, dumb, crappy, bleh.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of amazing stuff on television. We were talking about this backstage, too. There's so many great shows. And, I'm a grown-up, so I get to watch the grown-up stuff now. And my kids are all out of the house. The baby, who's about to turn 19, is off to college.
Oh, my gosh.
Please, you want to hear something really scary? I'm going to be a grandma in November.
Really?
My granddaughter is coming. Lulabelle Rose Boxleitner.
Wow.
So back to television. Now that I've freaked everyone out and everybody's
You're the
now
kind
doing
of
the math.
grandmother I wanted, by the way.
Well, with the cookbook, see, there's going to be a lot of baking and stuff. I know everybody's doing the math going, wait, if she's a grandmother and she's not, that makes me, ooh. Well, gosh, totally lost my train of thought. Where was I?
We were talking about TV today.
Okay. So I like kind of, obviously really well written, interesting, but I tend to lean towards the darker television shows. So but I don't watch them when they air. I binge watch them and then I catch up. I did it with Breaking Bad. I did it with Dexter. I did it with True Blood. I did it with, which ended, it was the last 3 seasons were just horrid. I'm very opinionated, in case you hadn't noticed.
But that binge watching has really changed everything.
Well,
hasn't
it really has.
Changed the
It's
form.
made a difference. And Tim and I are actually working on a number of productions. One of the reasons we moved to Michigan was to create our own film, television, and
Good,
theater
good.
company, and to bring incentives to Michigan and bring work to Michigan, because that is a state that needs it desperately.
Right,
With the auto
yeah.
industry gone, decimated.
How close are you? Where are you in Michigan? How close are you
We
to Detroit?
we live here. That's the. We live about 45 minutes from Detroit, 40 minutes from 25 minutes from Lansing, about half an hour from Flint, and 40 minutes from Ann Arbor. So we have access to buses and trains and Whole Foods, which is kind of important. Although I live in a farm community, so we have farmers markets, and I have friends who have bees and chickens and stuff.
Well, why do you think Little House on the Prairie was the success it was and lasted the amount of seasons it did?
I think, you know what, I'm going to take it beyond that, because the show went into syndication while it was still on the air.
Right.
So it is, as far as I know, the only television series that has not ever been off the air. It has been on the air in America and all over the world for 40 years. This past September 11th was the 40th anniversary, actually, but just a few days ago. And I think the reason for that is because even though, you know, everybody says it was such a sweet show, it was such a great show, and you could watch it with the family, show the whole family can sit down and watch, it was more than that. First of all, it was not only a show that the whole family could watch, but nobody was bored. There was something for the adults, and there was something for the kids, and the show they didn't treat us like kids when we were professionals, and it didn't talk to kids like they were dumb in the way it told the stories. And if you recall, as you look through the past episodes, we did some pretty heavy stuff,
Right.
and it was all kind of based on the time we were shooting it. We were shooting it in the 70s, in the early 70s, so this is just about at the end of Vietnam, coming out of the recession then, going into the recession then.
And society
And
was
society
changing
they were going through
really
so
fast.
many changes. Women's rights was an issue. Civil rights still are an issue. All of this were huge issues then, and it's all infused in the show. We had an episode with a Civil War veteran returning back home addicted to morphine who committed suicide at the end.
Yeah.
People don't realize that, because they think Little House on the Prairie, they go, ugh, it's so sweet. Really? We had rape. We had lots of stories about prejudice against, you know,
And the
Native
death of
Americans
your,
and black people, deaths of children,
Right.
deaths of it was a sort of no holds barred show. Rape was in there, and all of those stories and the ability of these people to survive all of that stuff, including everything that was going on around them at the time and having to live without, I think is still timely. We're still talking about women's rights. We're still talking about civil rights. We're still going to war. Now we have veterans coming home with survivable injuries and missing limbs, and how do we take care, and multiple severe brain injuries, and how do we take care of them, and how do we deal with this stuff as a country? And it looks like we're coming out of a recession. We're about to go into another war, and it's changed, and things have moved along, but the issues are still the same. And I think the show makes us feel comforted, and two, reminds us that it all boils down to family, love, community, and faith, regardless of what faith it is. That's all that really matters, and that's all that we really strive for, and that's all that we're struggling for on a daily basis. And I think it inspires people, because if the Ingalls family could have that then, we could certainly figure out a way to have it now. I mean, technology is forcing us apart.
It really is.
I am so amazed. You know, I stopped reading comments in articles written about me online, because it's like, we call it, my husband and I call it the celebrity version of cutting. Like, you just read this stuff about yourself and go, what? If you Google Melissa Gilbert plastic surgery, there's just articles about all the stuff apparently I've done to my face. A woman actually said to me, to my face, said, do you know you look just like Melissa Gilbert? And I said, wait, it gets better. I said, thank you. And she said, yeah, just like her, but before she did all that crazy plastic surgery. And I was quiet. One of my best friends was there, Amanda, whose chunky eggs recipes in this book, and she said, I can't. She went, you idiot. That is Melissa Gilbert. I think you owe her an apology.
Now, I want to mention, because you mentioned this in the cookbook and in your biography, and also you're in Parade magazine, which everyone can see tomorrow. You open and there you are right there on
With
the
red
inside
hair.
page. It's a beautiful picture, by
Thank
the
you.
way. It really
That was a
is.
good day. It was. I did this photo session where they had the food styles and everybody cooked all of these dishes that my kids loved, and all of my kids came, and we all had this picnic outside eating this food, and those were just candid shots that were taken that day.
Well, in all three of those things, you mention working in the 70s and kind of growing up on the set. You were, 9 when you started?
Yep.
And you got into your teenage years.
19 when it ended.
And you were doing this at a time that the whole world was changing. And I'd like to ask you to talk about the tension between your personal life and the character you played on television.
Oh my gosh. Well, gee, thanks, Arch. Way to throw a wet
I'll be
blanket on
leaving
everything.
now.
All righty then. It's okay. I wrote about it in the first book a bit.
Right.
There was a lot going on in my home at that time. My parents divorced when I was 6. It was a very civilized divorce, apparently, but it was something that was just not talked about. We didn't talk about feelings a lot. So we weren't allowed to express if we were upset about anything, and we were just told that everything's going to be the same, And then Mom got married to this guy, and he moved into our house, but everything's going to be the same. And then his German Shepherd killed my dog, but everything's going to be the same. Yeah. And it was just sort of this,
tough.
We don't talk about anything. And then I got to go to work where I had to feel all these feelings all the time. And that was like therapy. The workplace was the good news. And, my father passed away when I was 11, and I was working, and I guess my mother told everybody, and with Michael, the decision was made not to discuss it with me because they didn't want me to get upset, which, now, I'm with my children, and I'm always going, do you want to cry? You can cry now. This is a good time to cry. I think we should cry. Let's cry. I'm crying. Don't you want to cry? Just because I was raised so, in a family that was just so violently opposed to discussing emotions. And I talked to Karen Grassley, actually, about this recently. One of our fellow cast members passed away, which is happening more and more, cast and crew. And she flew in. I was living in L.A., and she flew in from San Francisco, and I picked her up at the airport. We went out and had a cup of coffee, and she said, I have to apologize to you. She said, everybody told us not to talk to you after your father died. And I wanted to take you in my dressing room and just give you a place to come and let it out, which she had done about other things after. She said, and I didn't. And I really feel bad about that. And I said, don't. That was the way it was. And so it was odd, looking back, to grow up in a family where I was asked not to feel and then encouraged to go out and work and earn money to showing feelings. But I think it paid off, certainly, because it's all right there on screen. And the one who really got it out of me the most was Mike.
We need to talk about Michael Landon, and there's almost no way to pose that question. What are your thoughts about him as you look back on those days?
He had the greatest laugh and the greatest capacity for compassion and love. And now, as an adult, and being married to a writer, producer, director, and who's nurturing the same thing in me, and now that I am a 3 times published author I got a bunch of other stuff in the computer just waiting, kind of started a novel. But now looking back, and especially hearing from Tim, and realizing that Michael was able to create this incredible environment for us on the set, to be that nurturing, amazing guy who was professional, who the crews loved, and then he would go home and be with his family and still write and edit and work on the next episodes. That's a 24/7 job. And he did it with a minimum of drama, certainly on the set. He was a human, flawed, perfectly imperfect person, just like we all are. And really, I think he just wanted to be loved.
So what was it like when the show ended and everybody went their separate ways?
Scary, bizarre.
Because everyone perceives that, and I believe it was a close. Well, you're working together
for the
9 years.
The last couple of days were just brutal, just brutal.
How long
crying.
did it take you to move forward?
I was 19 years old, and I thought I was ready for it to end until they told me it was over, and I went, why? No. And it was a fairly long grieving process. I think I kind of huddled down for a couple of months, really kind of not wanting to do much of anything. And my boyfriend at the time was really sweet and concerned, but understood what I was going through. And then, bada boom, I get my first big giant feature film, and I have to go into training and learn how to ride and do dressage and eventing and roping and any kind of horseman work. I had to learn how to do it, and my whole focus became the next job, and then the next job. And I would sometimes stop and especially on the movie that I did, I was on. I was in Texas in the beginning of it, and all these wranglers and cowboys and stuff who all had worked with Michael Landon, and were like, "Hey, so you're the kid, There you go. This horse is fast." Yeah, I got it. I can ride 45 miles an hour on a highway next to a camera truck. Put me on the horse. I got it. No, I want to do it. Let me do the transfer from horse to horse.
Yeah.
That's what a 19 or 20-year-old would say. Me now? Do you have to even have the scene in there? It's not happening.
But being on a series like as you were is really hard work, and you are required to be there. You can't have a cold or be sick or play hooky.
Nope, I've never had it.
You were required to be a grown-up at a very young age.
Yeah. That part's kind of weird.
And I don't think people realize that.
Nope. I think that's why, later on at certain times in my life, I acted out a little more than I would have as a teenager, because I had to work, and because, and getting a cold is like, you just get it and you keep working. This is a job that you cannot miss.
And we should address for a second the people who mistake Melissa Gilbert for Laura on Little House.
People ask me to sign her books all the time. Especially young people who don't realize will bring the books for me to sign. And now that I'm an author of my own books, I feel strange signing her books. So I don't sign them, and I have to say I'm sorry. And they say, "But you wrote this." And I'll say, "Well, no, actually, that would make me a couple 100 years old." And I may look it sometimes, but I'm really not 200. So no, honestly, I didn't write them. But I sort of feel like I'm kind of the ambassador for two things. Right. I'm the ambassador for the television series and Michael Landon, certainly, and that whole legacy, although Michael Landon Jr. is doing an amazing job on the show that he's doing, which is very similar to Little House. And I feel like a bit of an ambassador for Laura Ingalls Wilder and her descendants as well, because people now, even when they read the books, now they'll tell me that they read the books, but they picture me in their head when they're reading about her, if they've watched the shows first. Right. So, and I have no problem with that. I'm completely, not only am I at peace with that, but clearly I've embraced it.
Good.
And I relish it. I mean, it was such a beloved image to have, and it's just fantastic. Which would be why this thing has the word Prairie in it.
Oh, we're on YouTube, by the way.
Oh.
I don't know where the camera is, but this is what you always do on television.
Yes, no, actually, you have to do it like Carol Merrill.
This is on YouTube, so you can go back and watch it.
You can slow-mo.
You mentioned training, and that does and the horses and the movies and the life after Little House. I think we got to ask you about Dancing with the Stars. Oh, my God. What did you go through to be on that thing?
Oh,
how'd they talk you into it?
They'd asked a couple times, and I'd said, no, not really. But I had, I'd broken my back. and had surgery and had it fixed and went through a lot. Walking
There's
and
nothing
rehab.
more difficult.
No, I blew out my L5S1 disc and broke off a chunk of my L5 vertebra, and still kept going for 6 months. I didn't know. I knew the disc was gone.
You didn't know you'd broken it,
but I didn't know I'd broken it. Clearly, I knew something was
or
wrong.
Or was that part of your early training?
That too.
You just go
keep
on.
going.
You just
well, and
do
I was
it.
doing the show. I was doing the musical at the time, so the show must go on. And so they made me a special corset, and sometimes I had to leave the theater in an ambulance, and sometimes I'd just walk off stage and my legs would go out from under me, and sometimes I couldn't get out of bed at all, and I had drop foot. It was severe, but it was fixed, and then I got divorced, and was went through that change and was going through that and huddled down with the kids who were grown-ups, but still trying to recover from that and trying to figure out what the next move was. And I got the call, and I thought, this is the time. If I can do this after healing a broken back and getting through this divorce and moving forward with my life, this is it.
It must be like going to boot camp, though. How do they prepare you?
Yeah, it's like going to crazy Shmerkovsky
joining the Marines,
Ukrainian boot camp. It's 8, sometimes 10 hours of dancing a day, 7 days a week, and it starts weeks before they actually announce the cast. And it started out great, and I will say this for Max Shmerkovsky, my partner and instructor. He is an amazing choreographer. He's so generous of spirit and generous of heart, and we had the best time outside of the rehearsal hall. We'd have lunches together every day, and as soon as we walk in and shut the door, it'd be like, who are you? And why is it okay to call me stupid?
What?
And don't you realize I'm your elder? And I mean, it was just, I just cried all the time because sometimes I got really mad. And that's the stuff they didn't show, where I would take off my microphone and say, I'm not talking to you, I'm leaving. I'm out.
Wow.
I'm outie. And then I got hurt doing that.
Yeah, I know you had an accident.
I did.
Was that on camera?
It was, yes.
Oh.
I was live, and I took Max out with my head. I spun around and knocked him down in the shin.
So maybe
Didn't even bruise him.
Don't make
I got
you
a
mad.
concussion. Yeah, no, don't make me mad. I'll hurt myself.
Or his head.
No, it was my head,
Oh.
his shin. He didn't even have a bruise, but I had whiplash and a concussion.
Oh, that's no good.
So I had to sit out the next day, and then I was back the following day in rehearsal and just kept going from there. There's still something wrong with my left foot from where he stepped on it when he got mad at me one time.
Golly.
But I'm so cobbled together at this point. I keep thinking, a toe? Really? I've got 2 more discs now blown out in my neck, and I'm already fused, and I'm going through all kinds of stuff for that. So I'm like, toe, whatever. By the way, I don't travel in these shoes. I was in flip-flops, and I put these on just for you.
Those are gorgeous
Actually,
shoes.
I didn't do them just for you. I put them on for me to make my legs look longer and maybe distract you from all
I
of the
think those
mosquito
shoes
bites.
deserve a round of applause, don't you? They're really lovely.
Thank you.
Now, I promised that we would give some time over to you so you could ask questions. And you are so easy to talk to
Thanks.
that I'm afraid that I'm reneging on that promise. So I think we should let those in the audience have their say.
Sure,
don't
go
you?
for it.
So now there's a microphone at both sides. And usually at one of these events, there's someone out there madly waving, saying, get off the stage, we're out of time. I don't know how much time we've got left. But I see we have 2 people here, and so
Don't we start
how are we
signing
doing?
at 3?
Okay, so we've got
We
about...
got 20 minutes-ish.
You want to do 20 minutes of questions?
Okay, 15.
15. We'll
15,
do
18.
15.
It doesn't look like a lot of people are all that excited to... Don't be shy.
Well,
This is
here
your
we go.
chance. Ask me anything.
So,
I
shall we-
will tell you the absolute truth. How about that?
Oh.
Things that were not in the book.
So let's see. Should we start on the left? And what is your question, sir?
Sure.
Hi, I've always wanted to ask you, my favorite episode forever was the double episode you did with Ernest Borgnine. I thought it was incredibly well written, and you were so young, and he was already an Academy Award winner. I was just wondering what it was like to work with him.
Oh, it's great. Uncle Ernie was just fantastic. It was just easy. He was warm. He was welcoming, and I was such a guileless kid. I didn't know who Michael Landon was before I went into the auditions. I mean, if I didn't watch Bonanza. I watched Batman. Are you kidding? Adam West. That was Batman. Now, my friend Jennifer Garner, who wrote the quote on the back of the book, her husband is now playing Batman, so I will have to change Batman camps. But in my heart, it will always be Adam West. Ernie, I didn't know the history of his career at all. He was just so great, and we were all on location in this little motel where we all stayed in Northern California, and it was Victor French and Michael Landon and Ernie Borgnine and me. And they were funny and wild and really just great to work with. And when it came down to doing the really heavy stuff, they would focus in, and it was a very emotional script. My favorite episode too. It's kind of unwatchable for me because there's so much now that Ernie's gone too. There's so much tied into it, and I have so much loss attached to it. That it makes me sad. It makes me sad actually talking about it. But it was just a fun and fantastic, yet another adventure for me. And I felt like a princess there, with all the guys. I mean, it was just me on that mountain with all of them. It was great. It was great fun. And an episode that I really kind of, I'd never lost a sibling. But there had been some loss in my life up to that point. So I was able to get a lot of that stuff out too, which was great. And it was Michael directed it and wrote it and produced it perfectly. It is honestly, I think, and I think my husband will back me up, who never watched Little House on the Prairie till he met me, that the premiere movie, the pilot of Little House on the Prairie, and that are like the two best 2 hours or 4 hours of television ever made.
That episode always comes up.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
All right, let's cross over here. We'll go back and forth. And you, sir?
Yeah, what was it like back in the Prairie days, going to one-room schools versus the big schools that we go to now?
You know what? That's an interesting question, because on the set, when we were filming on the stage, our schoolhouse was a kind of a one-room schoolhouse. And then when we were on location, we filmed in the one-room. We went to school in the one-room schoolhouse. So there were two teachers, and one of them was mine, and then one of them, Mrs. Manier, taught me, and I actually, she's in my children's book that got published this last spring, Daisy and Josephine, as Daisy's tutor on the road. And there was Mrs. Fife, who I just saw. And Mrs. Manier had me and Melissa Sue, and sometimes Allison, but all the time me, because I was there all the time. And it was great, because there could be either one or two of us, or sometimes there were 20 kids, sometimes there were 40 kids if we were shooting school stuff. And when the 40 kids would show up, they were all the same background kids, and they were all basically kids of the crew, or relatives and friends, and occasionally Sean Penn and his brother Chris. Sean Penn was one of the few people to actually pass out on the set.
Really?
Yeah, from the heat. Yeah, when his dad was directing.
He wasn't so tough then.
No, I know. I know what he is
pass
deep down
out now.
inside. I could take him on in a sauna. Boy, that came out wrong. Sorry, husband.
I'm not going to
I
go
don't
there.
mean in the. Never mind.
Now, how about you, young lady? What would you like to
Thank you
ask?
for calling me young lady, first of all. My question for you, Melissa, is more about the book and cooking. You've been in show business your entire life. When do you remember ever finding a love for cooking?
It's actually I think I talk about it in the acknowledgments in the back. I always was fascinated by cooking when I was little. And there's a story in the back in the acknowledgments about the first attempt at scrambled eggs for my mom on a Mother's Day with garlic that my friend had taught me. And I say in the thing, and if she put in a little garlic, I thought, well, I'll put in all the garlic, like 3 eggs. And my mom ate it all, and she was, bless her heart. And the first real things I were quesadillas for my grandfather. And then it just sort of developed from there, and then it became cheesecake, and then it became, and then I had my first child, and then I really started cooking all the time. And cooking for me is another creative outlet. I have writing, I have acting, and I have cooking. And but there's something about cooking that's even greater for me. I mean, when I see my whole family sitting around a table, and everybody's eating, and no one's saying a word, it gives me such a great sense of accomplishment. And when the kids were growing up, the one thing we always insisted on, at least once a week, if not twice or more, everybody had to sit down at the table together, and we all had to eat together. And I had to find ways to hide squash in some food because I had a couple kids who would not eat squash. I actually served them spaghetti squash with red sauce made out of squash, and they ate it all and went, "This is the best pasta." And I said, "That was all squash, you little buggers." Try and give me a hard time about squash. So these recipes developed out of my love for cooking. My best friend Sandy, who's also in the acknowledgments, is an amazing trained chef. And then, so on Sundays, all of our friends would gather together with their kids, and we would all cook together all day, and the kids would swim and play, and then we'd all sit down for these enormous meals. And during the times of abundance and great blessing in our lives, when we were really working and our husbands were working, then we would have an abundance dinner where we would, it was sort of a Thanksgiving, not around Thanksgiving, to give thanks for what we had and have all of our friends come and eat ridiculously rich, unnecessary food like caviar. Not so much caviar anymore for me. Yeah, well, that was then. I had a metabolism. I don't have a metabolism anymore. That left when I turned 50. It went later.
Now, how about you over here?
I'm here with my best friend Melissa, and over the years, especially in the 80s, I can't tell you how many times we dressed up as Laura and Mary. We had the bonnets, we had like the full-on, we'd create all these scenes in our backyards. I said that to her. I was like, dude, we didn't wear our bonnets.
People wear bonnets to come see, used to come wear bonnets.
Oh, it was like our daily uniform.
I love it.
And so we would always play in our backyards, and, we'd pretend to be on the prairie and all this, and we always thought, and here's my question, not just talking about me, but, we did dress up in bonnets. My question is this. We always thought, I bet that Melissa and Allison, I bet when they're there on the set, they have so much fun, like sneaking off and playing and pretending on. Did you guys ever, stay on the set or sneak in or do anything crazy where you were just playing and having fun?
Oh, yeah. We did lots of stuff. Like that. And Leslie Landon, too.
Did you wear bonnets, at home?
Sorry.
It was the 70s.
It was much. I had to get away from that when I got home. That was the last thing on my mind. All I wanted to do was feather my hair, too. But you can't, half pint, we can't do the pigtails if you feather your hair. You couldn't do it. We used to explore all around Paramount and MGM, which later became Sony, where we were shooting. I used to go sneak over to the Robin Williams, to the Mork and Mindy set, which is where I first met Robin.
Oh.
And I would sit and I would watch him work. And sometimes the security guys would come to take me away, and Allison would be there with me, and Robin would go, no, you guys, the pint stays. I would climb up into the catwalks. That was really a bad, dangerous thing to do at the top of the sound stages. And then one time, Leslie Landon, Mike Jr., Allison wasn't there. Allison didn't do the really physical stuff. My brother and I think maybe Matt and Pat Laberto, when we were shooting in another part of the town, we went up to, where the wheel is at the mill, and we got in it and started running like hamsters to see if we could do it, which is a stupidly dangerous thing to do. And then so we triumphed doing it. So we went back a while later, and they just shot the scene where Merlin Olsen is sitting in it working on it, and he spins all the way around, and we didn't know. We started running it, and the whole thing was boarded up, and we were like, oh! We had to start running backwards to stop it. It would have been bad.
Do you know, I'm just so happy to know that there were hijinks. We knew it.
There were
We suspected
there were
hijinks. This is
I
great.
broke my wrist ice skating when we were on location. Allison broke her wrist skateboarding. There was hijinks.
And you worked with a broken wrist?
Well, of course.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, the first question
That's
my
the
mom
part-
asked when she got the call was, can she still work?
You, sir.
Melissa, pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to let you know we missed you at the Walnut Grove reunion. A lot of your cast members spoke very highly about everything, your work ethic and all that other stuff. 2 questions. First question, since you moved to Michigan, you kind of elaborate a little bit on that, but your appreciation for Laura with, you said the cold, the bugs. Is there any other type of appreciation you have for just what she had to go through now that you live
Still
in
living in Michigan now? Yeah. We've got tornadoes and all kinds of crazy things. But then on the other hand, we have fireflies.
Exactly.
I sit in my garden. I mean, you can't do this in LA. You can't see them through the smog, even if they were there. I sit in my backyard and just watch fireflies in the summer for, I don't know, an hour a day. I missed summer, too, because I was in Wilmington with the Cessna mosquitoes. I live in a really small town with a really tight community, and everybody looks out for everybody else. When the ice storm came through, everybody was knocking on everyone's doors to make sure they were okay. We didn't lose power. I reached out to a few of my friends who lived off in the, far out of town. They'd lost power and said, you guys can come stay with me if you need to. We got plenty of beds, and we'll figure it out. And that's just it's a completely different way of living. I mean, I went through the big earthquake, Northridge earthquake in LA, and all of the neighbors, we lived on a cul-de-sac, we all ran out. We'd lived there for I don't know how many years, and none of us had said hello to each other until then.
Can I ask just one second question? Allison got this question quite a bit. How is your brother Jonathan?
I don't know.
Okay.
I've not had any contact with Jonathan in a very long time. He left the family when he was 18, and I talked to him a couple of times since, and the last conversation we had was rather unpleasant and kind of scary, and so I don't really don't know. And it's been a really, really long sort of journey with him, and I've finally reached a kind of peaceful place and decided, that if he wants to know my kids and me, then he can find us. Thanks for asking them.
Okay, I think we have time for maybe these
You
two
guys.
gentlemen over here, and then you are going to appear and sign books and pose for selfies.
Well, across the desk selfies. I do have a plane to catch. I gotta
Yeah,
get home
yeah.
because I gotta pack. My book tour starts on Monday, and I'm doing a whole Midwestern South thing. And also, my husband is taking me to the local movie theater to see the Floyd Mayweather fight tonight.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What have you liked at the movies lately, by the way? What have you seen you really liked? What's your favorite movie so far?
I loved the Planet of the Apes movie this year. I thought it was phenomenal. I thought, I went in going, ugh, the Planet of the Apes movie.
Have you seen Boyhood?
Boyhood was fantastic. The Fault in Our Stars was beautiful. I've been working. So
I'm cheating. I'm asking my own
Yeah, what
question.
are you
You get a question. I'm
Hi, Melissa. Just want to thank you for a great body of work that you've done over the years, and I'm really looking forward to what you're going to be doing in the future. But one of the questions I've always kind of had is after you finished working on Little House, I'm wondering, Michael Landon went on to do the Highway to Heaven series, and I'm kind of wondering, why maybe you didn't appear on that show, just as a one episode or something like that.
Geez, I don't know. They never
Yeah.
asked me to. They never asked me to. I was really working a lot at that point, so I don't know. I don't know I don't know why. That's a good question. I'll have to ask Kent McCrae, who was Michael's producing partner. I'm going to send him I'm writing him an email. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
I'm totally kidding.
And now for our last question before you sign books and catch your airplane.
I want to thank you very much for taking these questions. And I watched the show as a kid, and now I get to watch it with my daughter, who's here with me today. We always make sure to have like 12 episodes on the DVR so that we always have one to watch.
You guys have to get the Blu-rays, the whole
Have to get a
show.
Blu-ray player first, but
Yeah, Blu-ray. You can download it on Amazon too, I guess. But the whole series has been just re-released, all in a package, all digitally remastered. And you guys have been watching the syndicated version. They cut 5 minutes out of every episode for commercials. It's all back in. So it's all the way we originally shot it with this beautiful sound. It's great. I'm still nudging Lionsgate going, guys, where's my 9 sound? I said I would do the back behind the scenes thing if they gave me a set of DVDs, and they haven't yet.
Oh, wow.
Guys, hello.
My question is, what the difference between watching as a kid and watching now with my daughter as an adult is I really appreciate a lot of the social justice themes that are in there, and particularly the labor stuff that's in there, all the episodes about the Grange, which obviously those storylines didn't involve Laura as much, but I know that you went on to be the head of the Screen Actors Guild and active in the labor movement, and that's not really a part of your biography that comes out in these things, and I was wondering how much the show influenced you being active in that realm.
Well, I had not realized that connection until that's been a missing link for me. I have been trying to figure out what spurred that passion in me, and now I know exactly what it is. Thank you for that. My God, my therapist is, I'm not going to...
I can do weekly sessions in exchange for the Blu-ray.
Thank you so much. That's amazing, because yes, Michael was very, he was in his writing, and he was very pro-labor, very pro-union, very pro-worker, and that was infused in the show too, so there's another thing that I walked away with. Ooh, gosh, he would have loved me being president of the Screen Actors Guild. He would have loved that, and he would have also told me I was crazy for doing
Melissa,
it.
you are very generous to spend this time at the archives and to answer these questions and to talk to us, and you're such a warm and inviting person, and I think let's give you a round of applause. You'll be signing books.
Yep.
And here we go.
I'll see you over there.